Yeah.
So we're going to talk about all sorts of stuff today. So we wanted to talk about goals, and we want to talk about success, and we want to talk about happiness, because we sort of felt that you can't talk about any one of those without talking about all of those.
No, it's just kind of like a natural segue, and we kind of anticipate that this is just going to be a bit of a rolling ball in terms of topic. We're not fully sure where it's going to go completely. We kind of have a feeling for it. So we're just going to talk. The primary kind of objective is kind of goals, I guess. But it's also going to cover notably success and notably happiness, and then whatever else kind of ends up venturing in.
And we disagree on some of these things.
We do, actually.
Which is, I think, a
This is
good
one of the ones
thing.
that we disagree on.
I guess goals was the main first idea for this one, and we do disagree on that. But I guess before we can get to goals, we need to talk about success. And that sort of ties into talking about happiness. And by that I mean that you have to define your success. I think this is one of the biggest problems people have when they're saying that they want to be successful. Because I get a lot of emails and stuff and read people online saying how they want to be successful. And they're never really too certain what that means. They have this idea of being successful as if there's some universally agreed upon metric
magic like success fairy taps you on the head and goes, "You're blessed."
Yes, and now you're successful. This is the line. Before that you weren't successful, now you're successful.
Yeah.
And as if there's a sudden change that happens.
There's also that kind of interesting sort of thing where you say you want to be successful, you hit that metric that you think defines success, and you realise you're still not happy.
Right.
So kind of almost quantifying what success is to you is a very tricky but very important thing, because otherwise you just kind of end up not really understanding what it is you're really shooting for, and then never really being content with what you get.
Right.
So, where do we begin?
So, how do you define your success? Let's do personal, practical examples.
So actually, it's still something I'm kind of trying to figure out. I still struggle with it. Some days I feel way more confident with it than other days. I can tell you what I used to think success was. I used to think that success was when you have thousands and thousands of followers, when you're making a six-figure salary, and you can search your name in Google and you dominate the front page. Like that's success.
Right.
And that was obviously making me pretty miserable, because I had no obvious way of attaining that when I was just kind of working a 9-to-6 job in London, not even in an arts-related field.
Sure.
So obviously I was kind of beating myself up quite a lot about that. Nowadays, that's definitely kind of evolved. I still, as you full know, have days where I will beat myself up because I'm not a famous six-figure salary artist on the front page of Google. I now try to make success is more a feeling of fulfillment. I do not yet see myself as successful. I can't. I'm still in my head studying. I am not yet a professional.
Right.
So actually, I'm sitting here as the one who doesn't see themselves as successful yet.
Right.
But I am becoming far more fulfilled. And that, to me, is now becoming more an important part of success, is finding peace with myself and my journey, the work I'm creating, the rate at which I'm improving. And now I feel like I haven't hit an end goal of success,
right?
But I feel like I've hit a successful pace or a successful journey.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting way that's changed.
Yeah, it's interesting on a few notes there. One, that success I don't think ever is an end goal, because like for me personally, talking about my own metrics for success, I did hit my goals for success. My goals for success when I was originally a student was to make a living off this stuff. And for me, I defined it very literally as making $40,000 a year. And I came to that figure because I think I Googled what was the median income for like American men or something like that,
right,
and came up with like $40,000 a year.
Pretty good metric.
And I was like, that's what I'm going to go for. I'm gonna make $40,000 a year, and that's how I'm going to define success. And I'll talk a little bit in a little while about how you probably shouldn't define it by money, but I did, and that was my metric. And then I hit that the first year out of art school, and by just working my ass off, and I hit that, and I realized that I was successful by my previous metric, but then where do you go from there? Like, you gotta keep evolving.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the stuff we talked about in the last one, where you just have to keep progressing. You can't just stop. And the same goes for success. Success is not really a
marker.
there's no
milestone.
I made it to the top of the mountain and now I'm done. It's a continual process kind of throughout your entire
Like
life.
a moving goalpost.
Yeah. So I think it is important to realize that whatever success you do define will change once you get there. And the other thing that I think you mentioned that is important to notice is that you need to be happy before you hit that goal. You need to be, you don't have to be like thrilled that you haven't met your goals yet, but you have to find some sort of contentment, realizing that it is a journey and you do have to get there somehow, and you don't have to be miserable the whole way there, because that does not sound fun.
Martyrdom.
There's no real reason to just beat yourself up and hate yourself because you haven't met this strange goal yet. Because if you do that, then you're going to get to that goal, you're going to be happy for like 10 minutes, and then you're going to set a new goal, and then you're going to be miserable again.
Yep.
So that's why I think that all three of these subjects need to be talked about together, because you also have to figure out how to make yourself happy with art. And I think this one's kind of a really important one that people misunderstand a lot.
We kind of look at it the wrong way around, like being good at art will make you happy.
Right.
And when you have all the clients that you want and all the money that you want, that you'll be happy. It doesn't generally work like that. We touched on it again last time, and I said about how you are still the same person when you get to that point. It doesn't fix the way that you think about things. It doesn't fix your need for more. We don't, as creatures, really think of what we want into, like we think that what we want is like a kind of a ladder that we climb across, and we move and we get the things we want and we move again. It's more like we stay still, grab things, and we just kind of keep wanting. It doesn't really change with how good we get. Our capacity to want grows with us.
Right.
Once we've got that goal, we're looking at the next one. What's going to fulfill me next? So it's really important that we get happy before we get successful. Not successful before we get happy. It's not causation type thing.
Right.
So actually it's kind of worth separating those pursuits, and trying to make your pursuit of professional success so closely tied to your pursuit of personal happiness is a really good way to end up completely miserable.
Yeah, it's very true. I think it kind of ties in with how increasing your income just in the general population doesn't necessarily equate to increased happiness. There are, of course, a little bit of correlation there, but it's not a strong indicator that richer people are just happier than, poor people. That's just not really how it works. It kind of levels out. There's obviously some differences there, but the same sort of goes with art skills. Like, if you go from student level to professional level, you're not just immediately going to be happier with your art. I know I'm just about as happy with my art as I was as a student, which is thankfully pretty happy.
Yeah, you were a pretty bold student.
Yeah, I was kind of full of myself back then, so I'm just kind of still full of myself. It's great.
Oh, honey.
Yeah, just be super full of yourself.
It's all right. I'll bring the kind of humility and the self-hatred.
Yeah, there you go.
This is how we balance out.
Yeah.
This is why we're so good together.
This is why I married you. Right here.
Oh, God. It's all right. I'll bring all the self-doubt.
Yeah.
I kind of want to touch back, actually. I think a lot of people will kind of be... What you said about having, money is not related to happiness. I speak for myself because I know that 2-3 years ago would have been like, how can he say that? He can only say that because he's comfortable and doesn't have to worry about money. He doesn't know. Let's talk a bit more about how that works, and ways that we can kind of find happiness before we've reached our financial markers and things like that. Sort of go down that tangent.
Yes.
Carry on with what you were saying on that kind of tangent.
I think it has a lot more to do with both your outlook on life and just your overall contentment with things. Two people can look at the exact same situation, and one can be happy about it and one can be sad about it. And that has far more to do with you than it does with any sort of external factors. If you... I need to get you to read this book, but everyone should read the book Stumbling on Happiness. And it's really good. It looks deep into all the science, all the studies on happiness, and it's very counterintuitive. we drastically overestimate how happy we're going to be and how sad we're going to be about things. Like they did a lot of studies on people that had lost a limb. And as somebody that hasn't lost any limbs, you think about it and you think, oh God, that's going to be terrible. My life is going to be ruined.
Be the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah, I will always be sad about that. But then they actually do studies of people that have lost a limb at some point in their life. And they realize they're usually just about as happy as they were before 5 years later. Sometimes they're happier. They're actually often happier, which is super counterintuitive. So when you start looking at happiness, you start to notice the pattern that it has very, very little to do with situation, has far more to do with outlook on things.
So this sounds like this is a theory I love, the hedonic treadmill, about how as human beings we kind of have what's kind of like a baseline level of happiness.
Right.
And we fluctuate between happy and sad, and then we kind of have this neutral basis. And that we also tend to pursue the highs of that. So we're always looking to be happy, when actually we always tend to kind of come back down. So no matter how much we get, how much stuff we get, how much fame we get, money, whatever, it has a tendency when that kind of peters off. So the day after you feel less excited about it. And then when terrible things happen to you, again, like it feels like the worst thing in the world. And then gradually you realise that you're still you and life still holds things in it that are worth enjoying, and actually you start creeping back to your baseline again. And that actually the baseline level of happy is more important than the extreme ends of it.
Right.
I'm going to be quite honest and talk about my own, if that's okay, about the ups and downs I've had.
Sure.
I've talked about it in an article. If any of you guys read any of my articles, I've touched upon this, I think in my Lessons from a Damsel Saved, which is also very honest. And quite frankly, I haven't been that successful. And I made a lot of mistakes when I was younger. I had to take care of myself. So I was working a job that I didn't like, with people who made me feel not very good about myself. I went through some extreme lows, and people commented that even when I was at my lowest, they found I was a strong, happy person, and that made me feel great about myself. I was like, I can soldier on through anything. On the flip side of things now, I'm the happiest I've ever been. I've got everything that, 3 years ago I could have dreamed of. I mean, even just meeting you would have been and now I'm living a fairy tale life, and I'm so happy.
You get to meet me every day.
That's just a dream come true.
That's pretty special. I wish I could
it's such a pathetic fangirl. I'm sorry, guys.
I wish I could meet me every day. That sounds great.
I'll take the public displays of affection elsewhere. But you would think that every day I boom, wake up, get up. I'm springing from my bed. I jump downstairs and I'm it's Noah Bradley all over again. And I'm my art's got so much better. I don't have any worries. I don't. I'm the same person. I have the same capacity to wake up in a foul mood for no obvious reason. I am the same. I will have on days, off days. And suddenly I realised that pinning my I will only be happy if I have this, if I'm able to do this.
Right.
Actually was just an excuse. It's easy. It does make you happy quickly, and then it comes back down again.
Yeah.
So working on that baseline level is actually way, way better for happiness. Making sure that you kind of find contentment in smaller moments in your life, making peace with where you're currently at. Taking it back and stop projecting so far into the future, and imagining a magazine cover version of yourself that has everything and can do everything. The easiest way to shift your overall level of happiness is to make that baseline neutral level a happier kind of person. And then when things get really good, you've got less bar to fall. And when things get really bad, you've got more of a pull back up to your usual self.
Yeah.
And that works quite well, I think. I've seen both ends of that cycle, and it's worked really well for me.
Yeah.
And also just admitting that I'm not all happy or singing monkey of just
Well, yeah.
positivity.
Yeah.
I can be a pain. I'm I can be plenty mopey.
Yeah, I mean, happy doesn't equate to ecstatic joy 24/7.
That's creepy.
I don't like people that are that happy that often. I don't trust any of that.
No.
that cannot be real at
the
all.
unending optimism of just
No.
like, we can do anything.
No, we can't.
No,
No.
we're not that special.
No.
Like, stop pretending we're that special.
And this is something I talked about online recently about when I paint. Like I'm not thrilled every time I'm painting. I'm not like, yeah, this is great.
With a really creepy smile while he's painting.
Yeah, sweet. Like sometimes I'll be like really happy when I paint, but that is super rare.
They're fleeting moments of just like,
Most of the time I'm just like,
it's
I'm
work.
just kind of meh.
It's work.
Sometimes I'm miserable. Sometimes I'm like, oh, God, I just want to get this done.
Yeah.
And the thing is that all the time, no matter how I feel while I'm painting, I still am at a higher level, really quite fulfilled by making art. Because at the end of the day, I get to make some cool pictures.
Yeah.
And that's what fulfills me. So happiness isn't about momentary things like that. There is a level of momentary happiness that I think you should work on and practice, and I think it is something that you can practice. I think you can practice being more contented in just your daily life. Whenever you wake up, you can feel contented that you have a nice bed that you just got out of and stuff like that. And there are ways to go about doing that. You can do the whole Stoic thing where his whole advice was that you're supposed to like live off of meager food and like wear the cheapest clothes for a while. And I think he was like live in basically a tent. And that was sort of his thing to like kind of like what you're talking about with baselines, to establish a new low baseline where, okay, everything's awful. I'm just eating like rice, just plain rice every day. I get to wear like cheap jeans and a t-shirt every day, and I'm sleeping in a tent every day, and I'm still like, I'm doing okay. I'm doing my thing. And so establishing these levels of baseline of, yes, I can be contented and happy even if I don't have all the luxuries in life.
From my kind of position, there's, again, I'm going to be honest, I currently don't make money. We are going through the kind of legal things about being in America as a visitor. I can't make money.
Nope.
That's not legal, and that means I have
Please
to be.
don't make any money.
Yeah, no,
Please don't get us in legal trouble.
I can't. Being here as a visitor means that I legally can't make money, which means I have to do something which I was taught never to do growing up. The biggest thing I was always taught was to always be independent and take care of myself, and I can't. It's really difficult for me because I mean, you look after me and you make it that I don't have to worry about going like hungry tomorrow if I can't pay. So in that sense, I can't relate with people who have to go through things like that.
Sure.
But I do have my own kind of fear of, I mean, as much as like I don't see our marriage ending after 3 glorious weeks, there is that like insatiable panicky part of me that's just like, it's not my money, I need my own money, it's not my money. And so, like, even though it's kind of, there might be some people who think, listening to us, because, we're in a privileged position, that you don't understand what it's like to not be successful and to have to worry about these things. So I just kind of want to put that out there to people who are struggling. I do. I beat up on myself constantly because I'm not in a position where I can take care of myself yet.
Sure.
I mourn everything I take off you and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But I practice what you were saying about raising the baseline level of happy, of finding contentment in things. And as such, even though I don't have as much stuff as I used to when I was independent and working for myself and things like that, I am a happier person. So even though I have less, I am happier because I've made a conscious practice of being appreciative of what I've got, recognizing that just because I don't have it now, it doesn't mean I won't ever have it.
Right.
And seeing, rather than pinning my happiness in an end goal, I pin my happiness in noticeable milestones and small growths. So every time there's an improvement in my painting, every time I gain a follower on Twitter, that's another personal triumph that makes me feel better about myself, makes me happier than like any amount of money that I earned before made me. So I just kind of want to put that out there as like a to anyone who kind of thinks that they can't like practice these sorts of contentment finding activities from a position of financial turbulence or anything like that. It's something that you can do. It's hard. It's really hard. I really feel for anyone going through it, but it's doable, and it will take the stress off you a little bit, and it will just make things more manageable, and probably you find that things go a little bit easier when you're less frightened of things and less beating up on yourself and that kind of thing.
Hating yourself is probably not a good thing to do.
No, it's definitely not. I mean, can we talk about my attitude towards goals in that sense?
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the year, I decided that I was going to kind of give up setting goals, which seems kind of counterintuitive, and perhaps maybe I can only do that because I'm in a position of privilege. But I found that by setting myself goals, I was putting a whole lot of pressure on myself, feeling like a miserable failure at every step of the way. Even if I achieved 75% of my goal, I could only see the 25% I hadn't got. And it just wasn't healthy. And I found that I was setting goals because I was desperate to make myself happier. Setting goals as a means of making myself better so that I could be a happier person. And it was doing the complete opposite of that. It was making me miserable.
Yeah, I can vouch for that.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're so much more stoic than me. But when I decided to give up goals, it's not like I stopped working. No, it didn't make me a lazy person. I actually achieved more when I gave up goals because suddenly I wasn't working for the expectation of success. I was working because I enjoyed the process and because I was looking forward to it, and every success was its own success. It wasn't a fraction of success of what I had hoped for. It made a big difference for me. I've been a much more cheery person since giving up goals.
And you've gotten a lot done. But this is one area where we will disagree on things, because I am a super goals-oriented person, because I've gone without goals before, and I usually just don't tend to accomplish much. I tend to slack off. I tend to not push myself as hard. And with me, if I have a goal in mind, even if it's a very high-level goal, just like finish this project, that will motivate me to every day work towards that thing. I don't do well with the smaller goals. I don't do well with like schedules or something. No. Daily schedules, I would be terrible. But if you look at like longer term goals, like I've always done yearly goals and always done really well because of them. Yeah. And I've made them very specific, and like, this is how many paintings I want to do this year. This is how much money I want to make this year. This is how many articles I want to write, yada, yada, yada. And that has pushed me to try to hit those goals, and is, I think, one of the reasons I've done as well as I have. That said, if I don't meet those goals, I also don't beat myself up, which I think is why they're good for me. Yeah. My metrics for happiness are not defined by meeting those goals. Yes, I'll have a brief moment of beating myself up if I fail to meet a goal, but I'll also kind of get over it pretty quick and be like, yeah, well, it worked really hard and I still did 8 paintings instead of 10 paintings. I'll still be proud of myself. So I have an easier time, I think, with that than you, which is why I tend to err on the side of setting goals. But I do understand that they work a little bit differently for different people. I would kind of recommend to anybody who's unsure of where they kind of sit on the should I set goals, should I not, that kind of thing. I've recently been getting into like the Myers-Briggs personality stuff, which I know not everyone kind of agrees with. I personally find it extremely helpful. Yeah. It's helped me understand my motivations behind everything more. It's helped me realise what's important to me. Yeah. It's helped me realise why I have the funny quirks I do. Yeah. One of my funny quirks is that I have to have approval from people, which is like something that people constantly bang on about. Don't seek approval from others, seek approval from yourself. But that is just my personality type, and that's not something I can easily change. So understanding your own personality and what works well for you is a good way of figuring out how to best move forward, how to not let certain quirks in your personality hold you back, how to find ways of rewarding yourself. So for me, my greatest reward is when I feel like I've helped somebody. It's when I feel like I've been honest and sincere and that I've helped somebody, which is why I'm being so candid about my crazy, like, whatever's going on up here. It makes me feel good about myself to share some things about me that I think might help other people. Right. And understanding that was like a light bulb moment. And we've started doing that. And suddenly my feeling of self-worth has gone through the roof. I feel way better because I feel like I'm actually getting to use my strengths rather than just beating up because I'm
lazy and useless and can't set goals and
Right.
I'm never going to be a good artist, help me. So yeah, anyone who kind of is interested in that should look up the Myers-Briggs personality tests. There's loads of cool resources online. It might help you, it might not. You might want to disregard it, you might want to burn it in a trash fire. But that kind of thing, I always find trying to understand yourself and your motivations, your weaknesses, quite an interesting way of moving forward.
Yeah, I read an interesting book. I think it was the beginning of this year. No, it was late last year. Sorry. I finally read Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. And overall the book was way too long for what it was. But it had some good points in there. And one of the overarching things in there is sort of defining what your metrics for success and happiness are, and to actually write those down. Like, I am happy when I feel attractive, when I feel healthy, when, what are your definable standards for yourself on when you'll actually feel like those things.
Yeah.
And really breaking those things down and then looking at them like really hard and realizing, oh God, this is super unrealistic.
Yeah.
He had all these kind of examples of, these people that would come in there and they'd be like, oh, I'm so unhappy. And then once you start breaking it down of like, okay, what does it take for you to feel happy? And it just takes tremendous things. And he's like, well, no wonder you're miserable. If it takes like climbing Mount Everest for you to feel like you've accomplished something for the day, then most days you're not going to feel accomplished.
Feel like a failure.
Yeah, most of the time. And he gets into this for relationships too. Like, what does it take for you to feel loved? And ladies like, well, he needs to take me out to like a five-star dinner and buy me flowers, and he's like, well, that's going to happen occasionally, but that's not really going to set you up
metric for a healthy relationship.
Yeah, that you're going to feel that happy sometimes, but you got to redefine what it is that will really make you happy. And I think that's an important thing for artists, especially in a different context of a lot of people. I think their metric for happiness with their art is, when I do a good painting, I feel happy, which I think is just a recipe for disaster.
Oh, yeah.
Or when I get a new client, I am happy. Or when I get paid, I am happy. It's setting all these external goals. And same goes for social media. If I get 1,000 likes on something, I am happy. When you start setting these external things that you have no control over, that will just happen as flukes or in time or anything like that, you're going to be unhappy with yourself most of the time.
I think the thing is that these hopes have a very insidious ways of becoming expectations.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of set ourselves the goal of something. I would like it if I got 500 followers, which after 2 months of slaving away, commenting everything, liking everything, ploughing all you can into social media, and you're still on 300, you then, instead of being like, okay, so I'm most of the way to my 500 goal, you go, why am I not at 500 yet? Right. And suddenly these desires turn into expectations. And it's almost like we start kind of gathering the thoughts behind someone who's at 500 before we hit that, which means that when we're not at 500, we feel like failures. Yep. So there's a lot to be said for kind of scaling down our views, which sounds kind of counterintuitive. It's kind of what I was saying about not setting goals, is kind of stop throwing that net so far in the future. Yeah. Stop thinking that the only way to be successful or whatever is to have this many followers and that amount of money and this sort of thing. Bring the net closer and don't expect things before they happen. Right. Expectation is the killer of happiness in so many. It applies to everything. When we start expecting things from the world, we suddenly take control away from ourselves and throw it out there in the world, which holding yourself accountable and keeping these kind of expectations inside is a nice way of kind of stopping the world from bringing you down. If I expect that I'm like, this month I want to gain 1,000 followers, and I throw that expectation out there, it's like it becomes the world's problem to fix. I am relying on 1,000 people to want to see my work and follow my work and fulfill my happiness. And when that happens, I feel like the world has done me what it owed me.
Sure.
When it doesn't happen, I feel the world has wronged me. and I feel pretty miserable about everything. So it's like, instead of kind of thinking like that, I found that scaling that back and going, I would like to improve my following on social media. How do I do that? Also, rather than being like, I need more followers to be happy, I'm like, so what do I like about my current followers? And I get massive kicks out of commenting back on everything I can. I love that I have a small enough following that I can engage with everyone who follows me. And so I make the most of that. So rather than being pissed off, excuse my swearing, rather than being annoyed that I don't have more followers, I make the most of something I know I won't get to enjoy when I have more followers. There is usually a positive to be seen in these situations, so I get to have these very meaningful interactions with people because I'm not successful yet. I get to offer advice to people who are kind of going through the same journey as me because I'm not so far ahead of them that I have forgotten what they're going through. Right. I can still relate. So that process of finding something good in where you currently are, in not expecting the world to give you everything you want, in finding peace if you don't get what you want, and finding ways to kind of make do with what you have. It can feel unfair. It can feel like looking around at everyone else and going, well, why do they have something? But again, that's throwing your net externally. If you start looking to other people and going, why don't I have what they have? That is putting, again, your happiness externally. The only thing you have control over is yourself. So stop putting it on everyone else. Stop putting your happiness as everyone else's responsibility, because that's a sure way everyone's going to let you down. You just can't, people. Be happy.
No. Just be happy. It's kind of like when I was reading that book earlier this year on the Holocaust survivors and how they managed to be kind of happy in that situation, which is just mind-blowing.
Like, how do you?
This person going through all this stuff still manages to kind of sort of be happy. And the whole revelation that he had, which is the whole point behind the book, was the only thing you really have control over, even if you don't have control over your body, your freedom, anything, your food, anything in life, you still have control over how you perceive things. You'll always have control over that. That's yours. And that was the thing that all of these survivors had, is that even if they had lost everything else, and they had lost everything else, all of their loved ones died, all their possessions were gone, all their freedom was gone, and still they managed to be happy because they were able to take control of that one thing, which I think is really, really powerful. Obviously, way more intense than art. But, still kind of applies to art, but in a far less intense way.
Well, it kind of gives you a little bit of perspective in that, we have a tendency to feel like people are luckier than us. And there is always someone who's luckier out there, but it's also worth remembering there are people who are less lucky. So even when things feel like, everyone else has got a leg up and I don't, and everyone else has got more money and more opportunities, it's worth remembering that if you were born in an English-speaking country, you don't have a language barrier with most of the world. It's worth remembering that if you were born into a family that is pretty loving, and that's great. Lots of people don't have loving support networks.
I mean, the very ability to be listening to this right now means that every single one listening is lucky, because everyone can understand English. Even if they can't speak it perfectly, they still understand English, and they have an internet connection. That's actually pretty good to be able to stream video or audio. So
that's pretty awesome.
So they have two things that means that they're lucky. They might not be the luckiest. You'll never be the luckiest. The luckiest guy is terrible.
Probably. He's not had to try.
Nobody likes him.
No one wants to be friends with him.
Nobody likes him.
He's a really boring person.
He is way too lucky. But you are lucky. You are lucky in some ways. And you do have some control over that.
It's quite, it's a liberating thing to kind of take responsibility for that. It's a scary thing because, the world does throw stuff at us we can't control. We are born into situations we have no control over. We live in areas we can't control. We have, life events happen that we can't control. And it's unfair when that happens because there are people who it doesn't happen to, and it sucks. And it's like, if only I could get this straight, then it would be fine. But actually kind of taking stock of what you do currently have and taking responsibility for the way you currently feel and the way you currently behave is a really good way of making the most of what you've got, because simply hating on people who've got things better, or feeling like it's not fair or it's going to hold you back, it's just going to hold you back. If you sit down and go, well, you know, I can't because that person has this and I don't, it's going to stop you. If you kind of stop and go, okay, that sucks, but literally I can't control it, there's nothing I can do to fix that, all I can do is work with what I've got. And what do I have? I currently have a working internet connection, I have the free time to work on my artwork, and I say have a loving family who will support me. That's more than most the world has. I still have a certain amount of power to act on this, even if it's a tiny, tiny step at a time. It's still a step that other people can't take. And it's going to sound really kind of... I worry that some people might think that sounds harsh or judgy, or like I think that people don't have struggles, and I really don't, because I really do know what it's like. I haven't suffered horrifically, but, you know, everyone suffers and everyone struggles and everyone goes through different things, and one thing that one person might think is like really pathetic, another person might think is terrible, and it changes their life. And there's basically, we are all going through stuff. There's like, apart from that one lucky guy, no one has it perfectly.
That guy does.
Yeah, that guy. Just, we don't like that guy. No, you don't. I don't want you to be that guy. I don't ever want to be that guy. So the sooner we kind of accept that the biggest thing that we can do, the only thing we can do, is take control of our own thoughts and kind of push forward with ourselves. That's the only thing we have control over. So it's our greatest tool, basically. It's our greatest weapon, is to just harness what we do have in the face of all the things we don't, and keep plowing forward anyway. And then one day you will probably be surrounded by people who are kind of looking at you as inspirational and going, how did you do it? And the honest answer is, I just kept doing it. I just kept trying. And then suddenly these things that held you back and oppressed you become something to be proud of. I did this in spite of all the things against me. And it's something to be proud of. There are people who don't hold back. There are people that do keep going, people that do work hard. Sorry, I'm tumbling here. I'm just about to say, at the same time, I don't want people to think that means that they should feel terrible about their choices to work more or less. Another thing that we see kind of a lot lately, which is great, I'm going to say, before I say anything else, it's great and I'm pleased to see it. There's much more awareness for kind of mental health online. I particularly see it on Twitter, in my community on Twitter. We're much more encouraging of people taking breaks, not burning out, calming down, stop putting so much pressure on yourself. And it's so wonderful to see, especially as a newbie, when you see people you admire saying it's okay to take breaks, don't put too much pressure on yourself. That's perfect. I'm so happy to have heard it. The trouble then comes from expecting to not... It's like the next step is then finding a balance. So the temptation when we see that it's okay to not be working constantly is to expect everything that comes from working constantly without working constantly. Right. So what I want to say is that it is completely okay to choose to work less, as long as you're also changing your goalpost for success. Like, you should not be like placing your like success goals for like someone who's a multi-millionaire and like they don't sleep, they don't eat, and that is a legitimate way to pursue things if you want to, but don't make that your target if it's not a lifestyle that you are able to keep up. That's when you have to kind of start looking internally and going, okay, I am not the kind of person who wants to pull all-nighters. I am not the kind of person who wants to pull all-nighters. I'm not the kind of person who wants to sacrifice my relationships, my hobbies. I want to have free time. I want to spend time with you. I want a family someday. These are all things I want, and that is great. And I can have them, and I can have my career, and I don't need to sacrifice anything. I'm not going, okay, well, I'll have a mediocre career because I want these other things. I am just scaling down my expectation of success. I still...
And your time frame for success.
That too.
I think that's the thing, is that, you can work less and still get to the same goalpost, but you have to realize that it's going to take you a lot longer to get there. Like, for me, I did sacrifice things to be successful early. That's what I did, is that all of my success could have happened a little bit later, and I could have worked a lot less hours per day. But I wanted to get successful really, really soon, and so I just worked like crazy. When I was in school, I would work 12-hour days and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to work 12-hour days anymore because it makes me miserable in the long run. In the short term, my only metric for happiness there was I need to be successful, I need to pay off student loans, and I need to do it soon. And I didn't mind sacrificing the rest of the things in my life at the time. And so I made that conscious transaction between time, happiness, success, all these things that you have to balance out for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with not working. I love not working. Not working is fantastic.
It's the best thing ever.
But I also don't have any delusions that I'm getting better at art or I'm making art somehow by not making art. If you're not doing the thing that you're trying to do, then you're not doing it. Which I know is like super obvious, but people don't seem to get that. They want all the nice perks of working 12-hour days without any of the annoyance and stress and unbelievable burnout of working 12-hour days.
Yeah, so they kind of let themselves, and to be honest, I'm guilty of this too. I really am. I let myself have this lofty goal of success, but then I also see people talking about how I don't have to put in 12-hour days and there's ways without that. So then I go, okay, I won't put in 12-hour days. How do I get to the success thing? What do I do now? So the truth is, either I start putting in those 12-hour days to get more like you. I don't put in 12-hour days, but accept it's going to take me 10 years to get like you. Or I scale it back and go, I don't want to put in the time. It does not make an equal trade-off for me to invest all this misery up front to then have to pay off later. There's everyone can kind of evaluate their own path. Everyone's going to have different kind of energy investments versus payoff, and that kind of relationship is something you have to work out yourself. In my current situation, I'm like, a 12-hour day is going to make me more miserable than the success is going to make me happy.
Sure.
And so I've just kind of had to be a bit humble and take a step back and go, okay, I cannot let myself feel like a failure until I reach your level. I have got to start identifying with my own art, my own successes, my own journey, and stop comparing it to people who are more successful than me. And that isn't lazy, it isn't giving up, it's not being unambitious, it's preserving my sanity. And yeah, I know I just feel like it's so difficult for everybody. Everybody's got their own jaggedy path that they're trying to clamber over in the most graceful way that they can. It's just kind of worth taking stock of where you are and where you want to be, and making sure that that investment that you're making is worth the payoff you're expecting. Making sure that you are investing enough, but also that you're not investing too much, that you've set your goal posts far enough to be happy, but not so far that you are pinning everything onto reaching those goal posts and you're going to work yourself into the ground and be miserable. It's all about kind of self-reflection, and everybody's journey is different. It doesn't mean you have to be lazy, doesn't mean you have to work yourself into the ground. Everyone's metric of success is different, and the world needs different. We can't all be rock stars. I mean, I think the world is perfect, full of all kinds of levels.
And it should be. Like, not everyone is cut out to be a rock star, honestly.
It just makes people miserable.
Yeah,
it takes a certain kind of person to... I don't think I could feel like that. I still think you are. That's
because you're crazy.
Only a little bit. Just maybe. But I would not be cut out for your route to success.
Sure.
It would not make me happy. And that is fine. We shouldn't all be the same.
No.
The world is richer for having two different points of view out of us and not one point of view. And I think that we all kind of need to celebrate ourselves and the successes that we can create, the value that we're adding to the world that doesn't add up to somebody else's, and how does that measure to everyone else who's successful. Focus on ourselves and stop looking externally.
And whatever makes you happy.
Do that thing.
Yeah, just be happy.
Yeah.
I think that's our general point. Be happy.
I mean, I'm on Twitter a lot, and if anyone wants to kind of DM me with their own kind of questions about how they're meant to find contentment when everything is so difficult, and you know, I'm always on Twitter, and please, no, it's like, don't send this to me.
Don't talk to me. Noah's in cave mode.
Yeah.
Noah sits in a cave and stays in his cave. It's very nice in my cave.
I'm the chatty one.
Yes.
If you guys have any questions, you can leave it in like YouTube comments or like private message, and I'll try and get to as many as I can. I don't want anyone to feel that they're not able to reach their own happiness and success. I would love to help anybody else. So if anyone's got any doubts, ping them at me. Yep. I love that kind of stuff. I'll try to help you as best I can. I just hope it's kind of encouraging. It can be difficult to say this kind of stuff without sounding like you're putting the blame on people, like it's your fault you're not happy.
You're a failure and you're miserable because of you.
It's not what I mean.
That's what we're saying.
It's like
we're saying you're awful.
Shush you.
Oh wait, we're not saying that?
No, we're not. We're not saying that. That's terrible, babe. You can't say that. I'm saying it's not your fault if you're not happy, but you have more power and more equipment to make yourself happier than you might realise. And that's a great way to start. It might not be your only answer, and sometimes life is just mean. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think life's been mean to me sometimes. I think life's been mean to great to me sometimes. Mm-hmm. I can kind of say that sometimes there have been times where I've just sat there and gone, I really didn't deserve that. That's not fair. Yeah. But you can't let that define you. You have to work with what you've got if you want to meet your own level of success. So I hope that the overall message of this is to inspire and encourage people and let them realise that they have more control than they might realise. Yeah. And it's not a criticism or a stamping, you guys suck type thing, because believe me, I've been there. I know intimately what it's like. And I still struggle with it. That was kind of what I wanted to get out. Yeah,
I think I've said all that I need to say about that. Yeah, I think we've covered that well.
I think so. Well, thanks for listening to us ramble, guys. Again, if you've got any comments or anything, feel free to comment or send me a tweet or something like that. I'll put a link in the bio, not the bio, the
description.
That thing. That bit that goes down there. I really know YouTube. There's a reason why it's on his channel and not mine. Anyways, okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for listening, guys.
Till next time.